Hello, this is Coach Aaron Saft and the Running is Life podcast. And today I have three guests, all three whom I've coached and coached to the Hellgate 100K. Joining me today will be Derek Brown, Tyler Ford, and John Goldfield as we have a conversation about their training leading up to the Hellgate 100K and their own individual races and how they went. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with all three together. And at the end, I'll catch up with you all on everything that's going on here with me and the world of running is life. So talk to you soon.
It's not often that I get to record with three finishers of a specific race, but in this case, I've got with me Derek Brown, John Goldfield, and Tyler Ford. And I'm very excited to talk to all three of them. And they just finished the Hellgate 100K. But before we get into that, I'd like them each to go in turn and introduce themselves. So, Derek, if you don't mind, we'll start with you. Just give us a brief background about who you are, where you're from, what got you into ultra running. Talk a little bit about like your experience with Hellgate, how many times you've done it, etc. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Derek Brown. I'm a 50-year-old runner in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm a college professor. I guess I've been doing ultras for about 5 years now. I have kind of a endurance background, kind of on and off back since I was a teen. I was into cycling at that point. Didn't really enjoy running too much as a kid. But then kind of got into marathons in my 40s and ultras since. So this was my second Hellgate. I did it last year and finished both times, thankfully.
And from there, let's go on to John. Go ahead, John.
Okay. So I'm John Goldfield. I am 59 years old. I'll be 60 in May. I've been running ultras for about 8 years, but didn't do much running before 10 years ago. Honestly, I didn't do that stuff earlier. Something happened. Uh, I'm a PA, a physician assistant here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I work for the North Carolina Medical Board. Um, and this was my first Hellgate. So pretty stoked to have been able to finish.
Awesome, John. And Tyler.
Hi, my name is Tyler Ford. I'm 31 years old, and I actually started running back more so in college. I started off with more road marathons, and when I moved to Virginia, that's when I started to get into the trail runs. And actually, I was living in Charlottesville, and so a lot of the local runners there have done like the Lynchburg series and of course, Hellgate is a popular choice. And currently, I'm actually living in Charleston, South Carolina. So there's not very many mountains down here. And so this was actually my second time completing Hellgate.
Perfect. Let's go reverse order and just talk about because each of you came into Hellgate with very different years and very different amounts and types of training. So, if you don't mind, um, just kind of go through and talk about, what did this year look like for you, and then, what was your prep like going into Hellgate? Tyler, do you mind starting us off?
Yep. So this is Tyler. Um, this year has been pretty busy for me. Um, I actually, because of last year's Hellgate, um, used that as a qualifier for the 2025 Western States Endurance Run. And so last December, I was put on the wait list. I was pretty far down on the wait list and I wasn't expecting to get in. And so when I started the 2025 season, I was more focused on doing Old Dominion 100 miler and trying to do a sub 24. And leading up to that, I did the Hone Quarry 40 miler and then eventually did Old Dominion, got a sub 24. And then a few weeks later, um, found myself starting at the start line with Coach Aaron at Western States, and did Western States, and then kind of rounded out the fall with Mountain Masochist and Hellgate. So I kept coming back to Virginia for a lot of the trail races.
And let's not skip over how you did at Western.
Yeah, completed. I completed Western States. It was a little bit over 25 hours, but considering I was still recovering from Old Dominion, I was really happy with just finishing Western States.
Right on. That was a outstanding year, Tyler.
Yeah, thank you. And I have to say it's a lot of it was because of you, because I started off the year with you and your coaching, and that was kind of an interesting perspective of trying to do all these mountain races in an area where I'm not really near any mountains.
And we can talk a little bit about that too,
Yeah.
for sure. Thank you for that. John, let's go back to you. What was your year like, and what who on earth gave you the crazy idea to run Hellgate?
Yeah, this was an interesting year. 2025 has been it's had a lot of challenges, I'll say. I've had some personal life challenges, loss of my father and my dog, uh, and that was in preparation for my second attempt at Crazy Mountain 100. I had dropped the first year I ran it 2 years ago, mostly because the altitude just like kind of smacked me in the face. I didn't even know what the heck to make of it. Honestly, once I hit 10,000 feet the second time, I was staggering around and made the terrible decision to take myself out of the race. So this past year, I swore that I would not do that, but I still ended up timing out at 78 miles, just having given it every single bit I had. And so I was kind of spinning a little bit from that double DNF and trying to decide what to do. And I had run a race up in West Virginia earlier in the year as a training run, which was great at the West Virginia Trail Fest. And sitting there in the fall, you know, in the early fall, late summer, talking to Aaron about options and thinking about, you know, if I wanted to try to get a race in time to sign up for Crazy Mountain again, because at that point, Crazy Mountain had a prerequisite that you had to have a mountain ultra of 50 miles or greater, that had, you know, at least 10,000 feet of gain in the 50 miler and more than that in the longer distances. And I basically didn't have anything for the year because my West Virginia Trail Fest thing was a 60K, and I had just been running. I hadn't been doing formal races for the rest of the time. So we looked at a few things, and Aaron said, "What about Hellgate?" And I'm like, "Hellgate? Are you crazy?" I don't even know if I could get into Hellgate. And so I just figured, what the heck? And I filled out the paper application and wrote my check. I had to go dig up my checkbook and write my check and send it to Horton. And sure enough, I got that email saying I was in, and I was just like kind of blown away. So that's what led me to Hellgate. I've known about Hellgate forever. I mean, it's one of those races that you just hear about. You know, it's like all the legendary races: Badwater, you know, Hellgate, Barkley, you know, Marathon des Sables, you know, things like that. They're all in that same sort of like mystique. And so, kind of crazy to have gotten invited to it and then suddenly have to actually go there and do it. But we did some good training for it, and you know, it worked out. I think a lot of the training I did building up to Crazy Mountain in the summer just then kind of carried through the fall, and we just kind of specialized a little bit more in some things. So yeah, it's been an interesting year. It's a good wrap up. Looking forward to 2026.
And just one last question there. You got in on the second round of entries. Is that right, John?
Yes. Yeah, so the first
Talk about
email
that.
came
Yeah.
out saying you haven't been selected, but I need to know if you're still interested. And so I said, "Well, yes, I'm still interested. Keep me in the list." And I just, you know, part of me was you know, I'm an old guy. I'm a back of the pack runner. I just, you know, I'm just out there trying to compete against myself all the time. And I suffer from imposter syndrome. So like I think, okay, I didn't get in because there are a lot of really fast people. They're expecting people to be able to really crush this thing. And so when he let me in, my first thought was, well, he must not have had enough people signing up. And then I reminded myself, this is David Horton. He would not let somebody in. He would go with fewer people in his race rather than let somebody in that he didn't believe in. So I have to think that he believes I can do this. So, and he verified that when I saw him in person at the pre-race. He looked me square in the eye and said, I expect you to get in under 18 hours. I said, yes, sir, I will.
That's fantastic. We
Yeah.
can all picture him saying that. I think all four of us.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
And then Derek, your turn.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I kind of had a fairly gradual year. I didn't have a ton of races, but we started working together in January. I think I DNS'd, did not start a couple of events, including I was going to do the ring at Labor Day, and work just kind of got in the way. So I had a trail marathon in May that went nice and smooth, but basically it was just kind of a nice, steady, 8, 9 month block of training. And then I did a 100 miler Ozark Trail 100 in late October. And for various reasons, I didn't execute it super well. I still got it done under 24 hours, but I probably had more nutrition and challenges and some other things. Um, so, kind of a little bit of a mixed bag there, but anytime you're under 24, you can't complain. So I got that done, and recovery seemed okay. And then I made the mistake of going to a professional conference and hoofing around probably 5 miles in dress shoes at a rapid pace. And this was like a week after the race. So here we are at the beginning of November. And I'd already gotten into Hellgate. I was excited about that. And I kind of forgot about the short turnaround between those two events. And then the next thing you know, an extensor tendon in my foot really started aggravating. So I basically got zero running for 4 weeks during the month of November. And come Thanksgiving, I kind of set that as the cutoff for like, am I going to cancel the plane ticket to go out to the race? And somehow things came around just in time. So with a little bit of cycling and just some motivation, managed to make it to the race with about 10 days of training under my belt. So was very happy with that as well as the finish.
I wouldn't say a little bit of biking.
Okay.
I mean, we didn't do excessive biking, but that was your, a lot of your training while you couldn't. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, all three of you came to Tailgate in very different ways, which is, super, super awesome and super interesting that, there was just so many ways to get to the starting line. Now, leading into kind of the start, um, each of you comes from a non-mountainous area. Tyler had mentioned he's down in Charleston. Derek is in the Midwest. John's in Raleigh, which it's hilly, but there's no mountainous. So, um, talk about your favorite way to kind of train each of you. So, Derek, if you want to start, and we'll go back across the board. What's your favorite way to kind of help simulate getting ready for a run like Hellgate?
Yeah, so I think I still have work to do here in this area. But this past year, I added strength training, working with Will France, and did that much more kind of deliberately with a good set of programming and heavier weights than I had done in the past, which was more ad hoc. So I think that was a big plus, and it's proven to be so after all these races. That'll get you so far, and then around here locally, we don't have any long climbs, but we do have kind of these 300 foot or so climbs. So I can go out and do let's say like a 15 to 25 mile trail run and get about 3,500 feet of vert, maybe 4,000, something like that. So if I kind of pick the right trails, I can get a decent amount of hiking in. that's kind of all I've done. We had a plan to do some treadmill hiking if that little foot injury hadn't come up. And I think, yeah, I'd like to add that in for next year. I was thinking about that during some of the harder parts of this year's race.
That's fair. That's completely fair. John, you want to continue?
Yeah. Yeah, Raleigh's hilly around here. But there's no sustained climbs. And that's what I knew was going to be part of the problem. And that was similar to the training that I was trying to do for Crazy Mountain, was to find ways to get some sustained hiking in. And one of the things we did this fall was I purchased a weighted vest. And Aaron put me on the treadmill with that weighted vest at least a couple days a week. And really pushed as hard as I could hiking with that thing, with I was up 17 and a half pounds is what I kind of got up to, a sort of a sweet spot without it being too heavy for my back. And that was definitely helpful, especially because in Hellgate this year, with the missing aid station 4, I think it was, we had to go 18 miles with all this, everything we needed. So I had a pretty heavy pack at that point, with 2 bottles of water and all my nutrition and extra clothing and all that stuff. So that was nice to know that that didn't feel like it was heavy, and I still had a really good uphill power hike. I did manage to get some course specific training, which I'm really glad I did. I had a trip up to Pittsburgh at one point, and I routed myself on the way back from Pittsburgh through to hit the course, and actually went to Pettit's Gap at that point and did an out and back from there. And then went up 3 more weekends and did the Forever section from Boblets, and went backwards from Bear Wallow on that god awful last hill that goes up to Bear Wallow. I went down that and then back up that from almost all the way to the prior aid station where it would have been. And those trips up there, even though most of them were when it wasn't even that cold, and they were mostly just dealing with lots of leaves, so it was a different environment out there for sure. But it still felt good to know that I had done some long, those fire road climbs. I had done a few of those, and I had gone through that section going up to Bear Wallow, and I knew it was awful. I knew what to expect. I knew that the Forever section, wasn't really forever. It just kind of felt like that because you're going in and out of the mountain, and it had runnable stuff. That's the thing that was amazing to me when I got up there, was realizing how much of Hellgate is runnable. So you got to be able to try to run it, and then the rest of it, you have to be able to just hike fast. And then those super technical parts, you just have to survive, basically. So yeah. But the weighted vest hike on the treadmill, that was pretty good, I think.
You also brought in a new strength component and tried to
Yes.
do some weight loss too. Do you mind just touching on that?
Yeah. So I started working with Sam Okanola, who's a guy who lives in Chicago. He's a quite accomplished bodybuilder, actually. He just did he just retired, but he did his last bodybuilding competition. But he became an ultra runner. And I ran Crazy Mountain with him both years. We were kind of the same pace. He DNF'd at the same aid station I did last year. So I reached out to him, and he agreed to help me do a little bit of. He's doing like a dad's trying to get healthy kind of program, and he helped me lose just about 20 pounds since the summertime, and get a lot stronger. Just doing basically about 2.5 days a week of 30 to 40 minutes in a gym. And so that really helped a lot too, because he's really sort of doing a full body thing, and making sure I'm getting some focus on quad work and hamstrings and things like that, and hip stability and all that stuff, as well as upper body. And I think that helped a lot for sure.
I mean, 20 pounds is incredible. When we think about losing 20 pounds, how much easier it is to move just in
Yeah,
general.
why would I want to carry 20 pounds through the mountains, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yes.
Tyler, that brings us to you, sir.
Yeah, and that's great, John. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, for me in Charleston, if you follow me on Strava, a lot of my friends that live in Virginia like to tease me because a lot of my runs are on a straight, flat line, just 4 miles one direction and 4 miles back. So it's pretty hard to get lost when I do that. So um, what's what's helped a lot really have been those treadmill hikes that we do. So I I actually had a moment in after the aid station from Bear Wallow Gap going up the mountain that John had mentioned earlier, where this is the first time it ever has happened, but it's like I was doing the hiking and then just kind of randomly out of my head, I was just thinking, okay, 10 to 15 minute or 10 to 15 incline, go hike. And it just kind of, I had a moment where here's a aspect of my training and it directly connected to the race. And I just in that moment I was like, thanks, coach. This like connected for me. And here I am hiking and just kind of funny that all right, go hike at the incline of 10 to 15 and vary the incline too. So that was a really kind of a cool moment. And it's surprising because we only did those kinds of workouts a couple of times a week. And at and each kind of hiking workout, I think was anywhere from 45 to an hour, maybe a little bit over an hour. And so at least for me, it wasn't ever like I'm hiking for hours on end. So it was just kind of interesting to see how that a few times a week and it carried over into a race where it lasted more than just, 45 minutes to an hour.
And we also, John mentioned that he uses the weighted vest, and we would do like treadmill hikes probably 2 to 3 times, just 30 to 45 minutes. Whereas with Tyler, we incorporated them into your long runs because you have like zero elevation change. So he would do like he's talking about, go run for, 8 to 10 miles on the complete flat, and then we'd get him back to his treadmill, and then he would, kind of vary the incline for 45 minutes to an hour to include some more, up and down. So he wasn't like having to do a complete long run on the treadmill. He could, kind of enjoy some outside running and then, get on the treadmill. So that was something different that we did with him. And then of course, Derek, we had to be careful with his foot. So we were hesitant to really do much on the treadmill. So three very different approaches to this race. And obviously kudos to Derek for for getting through this on 10 days of running and a lot of cycling. So yeah, very, very incredible. Um, any other pieces that you guys want to touch on with training? I'm really happy that all of you kind of talked about, the components of hill training. Tyler, you also had a strength component in your workouts as well. So, strength was a component throughout, a consistent component throughout. Did you want to touch on anything there, Tyler?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and John mentioned it earlier too. Yeah, there's a lot of climbing in Hellgate, but there's a lot of runnable sections of the course. So it's, you know, still be able to run, especially on the back half too. So
Yeah, yeah, and and anybody can take this one, but some people may not be familiar with Hellgate's course. Could somebody kind of help us with the description of how much single track are we talking? How much double track slash fire road? And what's the elevation gain? It's supposed to be 100K, but we all know that there's Horton miles. So it can somebody kind of enlighten us on the course itself?
Yeah, sure. This is Derek. I've got the course map up. So I think it's about 12,500, maybe up to 13,000, depending on the measure for total vertical. Um, yeah, ironically, it appears to come in around 66.6 miles. So that's the 100K plus plus. Um, I don't know the exact kind of percentage breakdown. I think, kind of loosely speaking, you could say most of these long uphill road climbs, of which there are probably 4 or 5, Those are mostly on kind of like fire roads, whether they're I guess mostly dirt, a little bit gravel. A fair number of the downhills might be split actually between kind of these grassy sort of double track and occasional single track. And then let's say 15% of the course, maybe 20%, is a little bit of this kind of meandering single track kind of on the sides of mountains. Some of those get pretty technical with rocks and off camber, but they're also really pretty. There's very little that's flat, except maybe the last mile coming in.
And what's the closest town slash city in Virginia that we're talking about here?
Well, I guess the start is near Natural Bridges, so it's not too far. It's kind of halfway between maybe Roanoke and Lexington. Also, sort of in that Lynchburg area, but there are no large towns anywhere really on the course.
Right on. John was the first one to send me the Horton update email. Um, John, why don't you tell us, like, this was it a day or 2 days prior to the race start?
Well, he sent us an early one about a week or so out when the Blue Ridge Parkway had been closed already for a week. And that one was giving a heads up that there was going to be some limitations to crew access. And my girlfriend Maria was going to crew me, and we had been talking about, and I had been making spreadsheets about where she would go and what she would need to do, and it really was just going to eliminate one crew access spot. So it wasn't going to be that big of a deal. But then a few days before the race, he advised us that his own truck was still stuck up on a road where he was up trying to do course marking, that the snow and ice was way worse than at all anticipated, and that we were going to have major aid station adjustments to happen. So he was eliminating aid station number two, which would be Pettit's Gap, and was essentially moving that in between the Forest Service Road crossing and Pettit's Gap to make sort of a aid station one and two was going to be a combined aid station at about 5 miles out. And then it was going to take you through the next aid station, which was, what is the next aid station? What is that? Camping Gap? Yeah. So it took you through Camping Gap, which is still where it should be, but that was one that crew could never come to anyways. And then it was supposed to hit Head Foremost Mountain, which is the Floyd's Field parking lot, which is right off the parkway, but nobody can get to that because the parkway's closed. So that's when he said, we're just going to eliminate that aid station. So just make sure you have enough. Take lots of food, take lots of water, make sure you have a warm jacket and a good hat, all this stuff. Don't be stupid, he basically said in his email. And so, that sort of changed a lot of, the ideas of what we're going to do to pack and everything like that. But honestly, it's like, what are you going to do about it? It's still the same course. You still, it's still the same time frame between each thing. It's just going to be a longer stretch. And I've run 18 miles on my own before and brought all my stuff before. So I just had to change my mindset on that and then move forward. But what was really funny was when we were doing the pre-race meeting, that's when Horton told us that he actually didn't know if the Park Service was going to allow us to have the race until that morning. And he seriously considered just running it anyways, except he knew that if they found out, then he'd be banned from going back again. So he was just basically hoping and praying that they were going to say okay, and they finally came through and said, okay, if you guys are crazy enough, nobody better call 911 because we're not coming to get you. That's what he told all of us. He said, if somebody's hurt out there, if you get hurt out there, don't call 911, don't call the Forest Service. Send someone ahead to get an aid station captain because you're not going to get help from those people. So yeah, there was some changes at the last minute, but then he kept just saying in his emails, you all wanted a real Hellgate, you're getting a real Hellgate. So it was a real Hellgate.
For sure. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Tyler, how did this affect your race, if at all? This email, this course changes.
Yeah, so I wasn't impacted with the with crew because I was just relying on dropbacks. And so primarily it was just kind of juggling, how much precision gels or chews or food and water I want to carry with me for that 18-mile stretch. Um, I did fine on the food. I did run out of water a little bit about, 20 to 30 minutes before the aid station, but I was actually more worried about, you know, preparing myself for the snow and the ice. I wasn't really sure, how much snow or ice was up there. So prior to the race, I actually, with my buddy, put some sheet metal screws into one pair of shoes, and that did wonders for me. And I actually stuck with that same pair for the entire race. I would have, yeah. So that was kind of what I had to adjust when I got those emails from Dr. Horton. And it's just kind of crazy to, to John's earlier point though about like they didn't know if they were going to race, if we were going to race into that very morning, but still like the volunteers and the people that went out there to go course marking, big thank you for them to go mark the course in those conditions.
Right on, Tyler. Um, and Derek, anything that did it affect you in any way?
It did not affect me too much. So I did have my father there. He lives out in Virginia, and he likes to crew at these events and had done it last year. So yeah, I kind of had to communicate with him, and we had to adapt the plan a little bit and just say, "Hey, I'll see you at 30 miles." Um, I was comfortable with it, and he was too. But yeah, so crew communication. I think I did also run out of water a little bit, kind of on that 18-mile section, but the temps were in the teens. We weren't going super fast, and I don't think it was that big a deal. I suspected that I would run out of water. I carried a little bit of extra food. Um, I guess I have a decent amount of experience running in the snow too, kind of having grown up in this area in Minnesota. So I was looking forward to that part a little bit.
And how did each of you come up with like your pacing plan, your nutrition slash hydration? Did you guys create spreadsheets? Did you use Ultra Pacer? Did you use a combination? Did you just wing it? What did that look like? Um, hey John, why don't you start us off?
All right. Yeah, I do use Ultra Pacer, but I do a combination because I have done enough, races at this point and 100 milers and things like that where I have been doing, have long sections where I can estimate how much I'll eat and all that kind of thing. So I made myself a spreadsheet that had an idea of how much food I should be taking in, trying to, ideally eat about every 30 minutes. Plus, I was having some maltodextrin mixed in with my precision hydration mix, so that I could get some extra calories that way too. One of the things I learned in my training runs up there, I did a training run up there where I had two bottles. I ran at night. It dropped into the 20s, and my water bottle froze. The top through all the little like elbow bends and stuff, but the electrolyte didn't. So I thought, okay, well, probably not a terrible idea for me just to run electrolytes in bold bottles, because the freezing point's a little bit lower. So I had electrolytes going in both bottles, and had baggies set up, if either in my pack to switch at an aid station out and to sort of estimate what my food intake would be. But and then in terms of my splits, I did use Ultra Pacer. I would say that if I was going to do it again, I would using Ultra Pacer, I would adjust the fatigue scale factor a little more prominently towards the end, because I was definitely, and a lot of that is because I think not just because of general fatigue, but I think the footing on ice and snow wore me out way more than I expected. because I felt strong through all of that. But then trying to run in the forever section and trying to run down that last 3.5 miles at the end, man, my hips were just trashed and my quads were trashed. And I was just so tired of holding my own body up.
Yeah. Oh man, I can only imagine. You also you had mentioned obviously you had concern for your crew, for Maria.
Yeah.
Due to some of the conditions, did you guys have any special considerations or any changes that you had to do with the crew?
I did buy 250 pounds of sand and put it in bags in the back of my truck to give her a little more traction. But yeah, basically, because the way Horton sets it up, if you have crew, you can't have drop bags. So most of the times when I race, I use drop bags even if I have crew because I've had a couple races where one of my crew didn't make it to an aid station from because of a car failure thing. So, and thank God I had a drop bag there, so it didn't matter. So then it makes crew just a luxury to help me be speedier. This time I knew that it was one or the other. So Maria had everything. And so I knew that the aid stations that were available to her, at least, Horton knew that those roads were accessible. So I felt pretty good about that because none of them were that horrible. Some of them were just a little muddy and things like that, but she didn't get in any situations where it was super icy, thankfully. So everything else was just a matter of carrying those Ziploc baggies between aid stations that were just labeled to, when I get to the aid station, I pull my pack off, reach in and pull it out and stick it back in my pockets so that I'd, keep eating. That's all.
Very good. Um, Derek, you had your father coming. Any special considerations for him for crewing? And what did you do in planning slash preparation? Any type of spreadsheets or anything in that regard?
Yeah, good question. So I think on crew, it definitely helped that he had been there the previous year when most of the aid stations were open. The Parkway actually closed kind of mid-race or late race last year in the afternoon. So that threw off one meeting stop, but that was the only one. So he had that prior experience, and then he lives in kind of an hour or two away. So I don't know. I kind of just trusted him a little bit to exercise good judgment, and I said I'll be okay. I said the aid stations are well stocked. I said if anything happens, I'll just grab some stuff and assume that you're okay. So we kind of trusted each other that way. Um, and on pacing, yeah, I definitely used Ultra Pacer. I deliberately set out to be more conservative. Um, Partly because of that training, but also just partly because I felt like I hadn't done a good job of that at my Ozark Trail 100, and I went a little too hard at Hellgate last year. That paid big dividends. I really felt like I was much stronger in the second half this year. I passed a lot of people in the second half, so super happy with that. Um, and nutrition wise, I was planful. I'm still probably a little more of the improv guy. um, but I kind of executed a plan for, I would say, basically the first 50K. At that point, then I start to kind of switch over to just sort of like what's going down. In this case, I did use a lot of sports drink. I did a lot of tailwind. I think the aid stations at this race are very good. So I had some hot food, but it was just kind of like what seemed like it would go down, and was real happy. I think the pacing was key though, because if your pacing is controlled, and I was using heart rate too, but with controlled pacing and heart rate, then my stomach is not working too hard, or it's not doesn't have adverse blood flow as well.
Cool. Thank you, Derek. Tyler, your turn. What was your planning look? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so for my planning, I loosely based it off of my last year's time. Just because of the weather and the snow and the ice, I wasn't sure like if I was gonna how much slower that would have been. So, I was just using that as a gauge of, all right, from this section to this section, I'll need roughly this many calories and a little bit extra just in case I take a little bit longer because of the snow and the ice. So that's kind of how I prepped in terms of food and calories. And then just kind of my goal for the race was, of course, it would have been nice to beat last year's time, but I know with the weather, I wasn't really pressuring myself to make a certain time per se. It'd just be nice to do that. And kind of the second objective is I have a couple of buddies that were racing. I just wanted to beat them. So in terms of pacing strategy, it would have been, just fast enough to beat them. But it was kind of interesting at the start of the race. One of my buddies, he went at a pace pretty fast, and I was like, I won't be able to sustain that. So I just kind of went my own pace, and I kind of had a general guide of what times I want to hit at like Jennings Creek and Bear Wallow Gap, but I wasn't really paying too much attention to my watch and just kind of seeing where the day would take me.
Very good. Thank you, Tyler. Um, this race has a unique challenge of a 12:01 a.m. start, so just after midnight. Can you guys talk to like what did your day look like? What did Friday look like? Because it's basically Friday slash Saturday morning that you're starting. So what did Friday look like for you guys? Tyler, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. So I would actually say the on Thursday, because I live in South Carolina, that's when I drove up to Virginia. And so on Friday, I was actually just hanging out with my buddy and just kind of relaxing at his house for most of the day, watching The Hangover as a way to pass time. Um, but a couple of days up prior to the race, I already kind of gathered my drop bags and just, you know, did some pre-work just to have it all ready and sorted and the clothes all packed. So on Thursday and on Friday, I didn't have to mess around with my drop backs too much. So just try and keep the stress down. So essentially Friday was just sitting and waiting and waiting.
And waiting. Right
Hmm.
on. Very good. Derek, how about you? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, a little different. So the original plan was to go out on Thursday. It's pretty long from St. Louis. I mean, I could drive, but that's a full day. So I had planned to fly just like last year. Thought I would fly on Thursday. Well, then we had a work holiday party scheduled for Thursday night. So I thought this is important. I'm going to go to the holiday party and change my flight to Friday morning. I actually think it worked out fine. Um, I still got, I focused on getting good sleep the whole week leading up to it. But I had a 4 a.m. flight Friday morning. Flew out, got in midday, had a nice big pancake lunch with my dad, which was kind of the focus. Got a short nap, and then we got on the road down to the race. I switched over and kind of let him do the driving, so I think that let me relax a little bit. And then also, again, decided that I would kind of do my own evening nutrition for. So I had some oatmeal and a couple things like that. I opted out of the pasta dinner this time, and that seemed to work great. So I think it worked fine. Um, but I guess just to kind of wrap up the point, I think the midnight start is one of the most challenging things about this event. You're kind of sleepy. You still spend time between the meeting, which happens about 7 o'clock at night. You still spend time between that and the start, kind of trying to decide what to do. Um, so that's always going to present a challenge.
Right. And John, what did your Friday look
Yeah.
like?
I drove up from Raleigh on Friday. We left here at around noon or so. Um, and so we were up there roughly 3:30-ish and had enough time to check into a hotel, drop off some stuff, and kind of leisurely make our way up to packet pickup and the dinner. And then we actually went back down to the hotel briefly just to kind of go through the crew bag one more time so Maria could take a look at it and also to bring it inside so it wasn't freezing in the back of my truck. And that way I was able to get dressed and do all the, my lube and all that stuff in a nice, clean, warm hotel room, which was nice. And then we actually timed it so we got back to Camp Bethel just about right as the convoy of vehicles was leaving with the vans, and we just followed everybody up to the start. But I do pretty well with sleep deprivation. I spent years working shift work in the emergency room, so it's never really been that hard for me. The hardest one I ever did was when I did Madeira. That was a midnight start that ended up going through the next night as well. So the second night of no sleep was when I started to hallucinate and just kind of be goofy and all that stuff. But it was entertaining. It wasn't a bad thing. But yeah, I never got the sleepies in this race, and part of that was just because of the excitement of the race and the challenge of everything. Having to focus so much on your footing and the cold air, keeping you awake in your face and everything. So yeah, it felt great. I mean, it really felt awesome when the sun came up. I mean, that was really a good lift, like it always is. But having the sun come up in a snowy environment is even more beautiful. So that was cool.
That is cool. It's so pretty, especially when the parkway is closed and there's no vehicles and stuff. It feels just so private. So if you guys don't mind, why don't we break down the race in two halves? So let's kind of start with like the first half of the race. So each of you kind of talk about maybe some highlights and lowlights of your first 50K. Maybe some good and bad memories of things that happened, and then we'll talk about the back half. So, John, why don't you roll us through some highlights and lowlights of the first half?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the very first section is fun because everybody's together there, and I intentionally kind of put myself towards the back of the group a little bit so I wouldn't go out too fast. I did that was the only time I ever took a wrong turn because we weren't in snow yet, and I just basically went straight for a second right before the creek crossing, but it was pretty obvious everybody was turning and going down to the creek. So, um, but then once you cross the creek and the creek was everybody I was worried about, oh, it's going to be so cold and everything, but it was not that bad, and your feet get wet. There's no way around it. It's about ankle deep. And then, even if you didn't get your feet wet, you're then like hiking and running through snow that's also, 6 inches deep for the rest of the night. So it wouldn't have mattered if you had a creek crossing or not. You're going to have wet feet. But yeah, I mean that's kind of what it was. It was that that little bit of trail stuff and following a bit of a conga line through the woods, and felt social and felt exciting and all that stuff. And then kind of settling into these long fire road climbs where we started to encounter the ice, which was really interesting. And I had yak tracks on the back of my pack, but I didn't use them until after camping gap because I just was trying to see if I could avoid wasting the time to stop, if I could just keep finding spots where I could walk. And it you generally could if you got a little bit of snow underneath your feet, or if you found the ice that was the most like gritty looking and messed up, but it definitely took concentration to do that. So that actually helped kind of pass the time too, just kind of continuing to do that power hiking and all that stuff. The little hill coming down out of Pettit's Gap was really fun. I thought the little single track winding bit that goes down. It was like a luge run because there'd probably been 100 people ahead of me had just gone through. I didn't have to think at all about the course markings or anything because it was deep enough snow. You just followed the track, and I was kind of hauling ass through there. It was really fun. I remember hitting the little road at the bottom there and turning to the guy next to me and said, "Wow, that was really fun." I think he had done it a lot of times before, and he just said, "Oh yeah." But but yeah, I mean, basically, the sort of challenge was that knowing that 18-mile section was coming up and getting to Camping Gap, I was ahead of my estimated time, so I was pretty happy with myself and I felt good. And Horton was there, which was always fun. You come in, I holler my number, and then I hear him say, "John Goldfield," and I'm like, "Oh my God, Horton's here!" And it's kind of like the man himself. You got to step up and say, "Yeah, I feel good. I'm strong." But yeah, getting out there and doing that, and then my time into Jennings was I think I came in at what time was that? Somewhere around 7:25. So it had gotten light, but I was still about a half hour ahead of my estimated time, which was great. So I felt great. I was fired up. I wasn't cold, and I was completely wet, from sweat and everything like that. So I changed my upper layers and my shoes and socks, but that just made me feel great. And they had French toast sticks there, and I was like, "This is awesome, man!" I thought I was like crushing it at at that first half, but I knew that I had really burned a lot of energy doing all the stuff I had been doing, but it was so much fun that I just was like, "Ah, screw it."
And,
But I knew I'd pay for it later.
oh, well, I'm glad you had a good first half. And
Yeah.
John had us on, well, had me on a thread with his sister and some other friends that were following along. So I got to get the the updates as you moved around, which was cool. What was your shoe of choice, and what was your lighting situation, just so folks know?
Yeah, I started the race with mountain racers and some gators, and when I got to Jennings, I switched to La Sportiva Jackals because they have a rock plate. And having run the course before, I knew that the rockier stuff was coming in the latter half, and I sort of feel like both those shoes are pretty nimble for me. They both feel pretty good, like I don't actually notice them. So that ended up being a really good choice for both of those. I probably could have switched them either way, but I think the rock plate probably helped, especially coming up to Bear Wallow and all that stuff. And then I had an Ultraspire waist belt or waist light and an Ultraspire headlight. And I actually kind of alternated between the two to try to conserve as much battery as possible because my waist light did start to blink at me just before sunrise was coming up, and so I kind of made it through with one battery for the night, which was nice. But I knew that the batteries were going to drain a little bit faster because it was so cold, and because I was running them at higher levels when I would run a section, I would put it up to a higher level and turn it down. One weird thing about the waist light, I was telling Marie about this, and I thought I was hallucinating, but the waist light, it picks up shadow right down low. So the snow, because it's all crystalline, each little crystal was casting a shadow behind it. So it made the snow gray. So it was like you were running on the moon. Because it was all gray except where there was a post hole from somebody's foot, and then that would be white. And I didn't really think about it for the longest time, but then you're out there for hours, in that section after Camping Gap, and you're just like, God, this snow is ugly, man. Why does it have to be gray? So I would sometimes switch my waist light off and put my headlight on and go, oh, it's snow, it's good. But yeah, but the waist light worked pretty well.
Good, good, nice. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Tyler, you want to take us through your first half and kind of maybe tell us what your footwear situation and lighting situation were?
Yeah. I'll start off with my footwear. I essentially just wear Brooks Cascadia. And so I brought two pairs, but only one pair I put in the sheet metal screws. And the other pair I had Yak tracks, but I ended up not using the other pair just because I liked the feel. But it would have been nice because a fresh pair of shoes, but I just felt comfortable sticking with the sheet metal screws in my feet. And for my headlights, I just used a like a Swift RL headlight, and that actually lasted the entire night for me. But I did have a black diamond spare in my vest just in case, because if if I'm out of light, then I'm done. And so the the first half of the race had you know downs and ups. Probably more downs. But actually prior to the race, in case you didn't know, Derek actually offered a ride because for those that haven't done Hellgate, the race, it's a point to point. So the end of the race is at Camp Ethel, and that's where everyone meets up. And so you need to get a ride to the start of the race. So that was actually I had a ride to the start thanks to Derek and his father, and I also got a chance to meet one of Derek's friends. His name's Chase, and I'll get to Chase in a couple of minutes. And so what is a really special part about this race is actually the start itself, because right before the start, Horton is trying to wrangle all his runners, making sure that they check in. And right before the race, you have everyone just, standing right in front of that gate singing the Star Spangled Banner. So that's a really cool moment and a special moment to kind of be a part of. And so that was a definite highlight. And from there, it was kind of interesting. Um, the pretty early in the race, John had mentioned a creek crossing, and I almost ate it pretty bad, because those sheet metal screws, they do well on the snow and the ice, but if you step on the rock, wet, slippery rock, you might fall in. So I was able to catch myself, but I almost ate it pretty bad. But unfortunately, there was some lady behind me that did fall in. And I think that creek crossing was only like 3 miles in. So she got up fine, but it was you know, want to avoid getting wet as much as possible. Um, but yeah, there's plenty of climbs, but eventually we're going through snow and ice like 6 to 8 inches, and after a while, I got into like a little pity party. I'm like, man, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. Why am I doing this? It's wet, it's snowy. Am I even going to make it out to the morning? And so, I was just kind of getting in my head, and then that was really during the 18-mile stretch where it's like, man, it would have been nice if I brought one more extra water bottle, because I'm starting to run out. And then eventually, um, I actually caught up with Chase, Derek's friend. And so at that moment, I was like, hey, Chase, it's kind of funny how talking to people, or at least running with people, will bring you out of that little pity party state, or just, elevate the mood. So that was a pretty cool experience, being able to, hey, I just met you right in front of the race and got to talking, and soon enough we were at Jennings Creek, and so of course it's great getting food, and I actually, when I got there, just drank an entire bottle and then filled it up again. And I also know one of the volunteers at that aid station, and he told me, hey, your buddy Jason is only 10 minutes ahead. And so at that point, it's not only the sun is starting to rise, but I also have like, oh, there's blood in the water. I could I got time to catch up to my friend. So that's kind of the first half for me, was just making it through the night. And so for those that ever do Hellgate, or are interested in doing Hellgate, you just got to get through the night. And once you get that daylight, you're in the clear.
Thank you, Tyler. Very cool. And Derek?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Tyler. One of the keys is making it through the night. I think it's easy to get down on yourself at early on. Also, it's 10 to 15 degrees colder up on that ridge. We were lucky it wasn't windy this year, but last year it was a little breezy, and sometimes it's very windy up there. So that can present, other challenges. But no, my first half went real well. I did kind of intentionally sort of like, take a few deep breaths, try to stay present, keep that heart rate in check, and just tell myself, like, enjoy the experience. And that was helpful. I tried not to worry too much about pace and just be happy for the experience. Um, I think the real highlights for me, we ran along Overstreet Falls, which is beautiful. That's probably at least a half mile or more. I remembered it from the previous year, but Horton pointed it out because he said if you run out of water on the 18-mile section, you can fill up at Overstreet. So I was kind of looking out for it, and yeah, by paying attention to the surroundings, I was like, wow, this is a beautiful kind of rocky, extended sort of gradual waterfalls. So that was really cool. I love running at night. And there were a few times when we got nice, brilliant views of the sky. Happened to be totally clear, so you could see amazing stars. And then I was really fortunate. Sometime around 2:30 in the morning, I just happened to look over and see kind of a sort of orange-colored crescent moon rising, and I was blown away by that. I was not expecting that, and yeah, got to Jennings right around 7 o'clock, right around some twilight. So that made for a great stop and breakfast.
Cool. All right. And if we move towards the back half, and actually, before I get there, Derek, what was your footwear and your lighting?
Oh, excuse me. So I had a kind of a basic black diamond headlamp, which I used most of the race. Probably just like a $30 one or something like that. And then I do have an Ultra Aspire waist lamp. That's very helpful. I turned it off a lot, I think, on any of the uphills because it just didn't really need it. And then that saved some battery for the downhills. Um, Maybe I saved too much battery. I don't know. But that worked fine. And for footwear, I just did Ultra Olympus 5. It's not a very responsive or fast shoe, but it's comfortable. And in this case, I think because it's got a real wide kind of platform, it probably did pretty well in the snow. So, um, I experienced some of the traction issues that everybody did, but I think it was okay, and I did not have any spikes.
Cool. Very good. And then if we think about the back half, was there anything that you guys did during the back half? Changes of clothes, obviously with daylight, temperature is going to start increasing again. So was there anything that you needed to change out? And then if you want to kind of take us through the conclusion of each of your races, Derek, you can kind of continue on and keep going if you would.
Yeah, sure. So a handful of things there. Yes, thought about changing clothes at mile 30, but I decided to wait until Bear Wallow when it was warmer at 46. I I went down to a lighter layer, got rid of my stocking cap and a couple other things. So that was good. The afternoon was relatively warm. Um, you know, it's interesting. There's less climbing, but in some ways, I think the second half is always harder, like it is for every race. But it gets more technical. There's some kind of annoying sections, which are sort of lore in Hellgate in that second half. So I had to concentrate more at this point. I remember this mantra. I think this came from Jesse Rich, and something I heard in a podcast that he did at Run Rabbit Run, and it was something like, "Don't be a hero in the first half, and don't be a wimp in the second half." And or you can do variations on that, but I did kind of keep telling myself that, like, okay, you've done good up to here. Now don't be a wimp. And so, like, if it was runnable, but like the legs were kind of sluggish, I tried to not be a wimp and I tried to make myself run. And then I also found myself kind of jockeying back and forth with like two or three different people for many hours. A guy named Constantine Walmsley was one. There were two or three others, and it was great. Like we just would kind of use each other to sort of push each other. Um, and you'd come up to somebody, and sometimes they would like let you pass them, and then vice versa, like because you're a little faster on the uphill or the downhill. And you could tell you were using each other because sometimes you'd say, "Oh, go ahead and pass me," and they'd say, "I'm good, but thanks. You're doing awesome." So that was kind of interesting. So I think just fellow racers supported each other, and yeah, that got us a long way. And I yeah, didn't really have too many lows, although it did get harder in that second half.
Very good. Um, and how was your time in comparison to last year? I know obviously we had some snow conditions here, but given that, how was your time?
Yeah, so I was about 55 minutes slower. I think my placing was about the same. My training was better last year because I didn't have that injury, but we didn't have the snow. But my execution was terrible last year. In fact, so much so that when I looked at my Strava and how poorly I had positive split it last year, I got PRs on virtually every part of the second half this year. Um, so that was kind of cool to see post race. So I was very happy with the time. Very happy.
Excellent. We'll get to some takeaways here. So in the back of your minds, maybe start thinking about some takeaways that you brought away from this year. Perhaps it's something that you would have done differently, or some lessons that you learned. So keep those kind of in the back of your mind. But continuing on, John, why don't you kind of fill us in on your back half of the race?
Sure. So yeah, Jennings Creek, I did change all my upper layers. I kept my I had some Path Projects pants on that are pretty versatile from like way down into the teens up into the 40s. I can run in those. So I just changed my shirt and an outer shirt, had a couple layers, and changed my shoes and socks, and then ate some food there. They had French toast sticks, which were really good. Um, one really cool thing is as I was leaving Jennings Creek and headed up that long fire road, I settled in behind this guy or next to this guy who turned to me and said, "You're a new face. What's your story?" And introduced himself. And it was actually Darren Dunham, who's one of the original five. And so he was, going for yet another finish. And so for the next, however many miles that long climb is, he just started like without even me asking, he just started explaining and giving me details about all of what I can expect for the rest of the course, which was so cool. Like I'm sure he just knew that that's what anybody would want, especially because I told him it was the first time and all that. So he gave me good advice. We had a totally equal pace going up, which was great, and then he sort of fell off a little bit, and then I didn't see him after that. But he ended up finishing about 20 or 25 minutes after me, so just under the cutoff, thankfully. But yeah, I was still in great spirits getting out of there, and I stayed, pretty high until that really rough part going up into Bear Wallow. And like I said, I had been on that part of the course before, so I knew what to expect. But the time I had done it, it was mostly just leaves and rocks. And now it was snow on top of leaves on top of rocks. And where that was starting to melt, it was now adding mud. And so it was really challenging just, trying to keep your footing and not go off the edge where you'd put your foot down and turn out that that was just loose snow and leaves and not actually anything solid and all that stuff. So it really slowed me down. And by the time I got into Bear Wallow, I knew that I was starting to feel the effects of the long night to my legs. But I will say the most beautiful part of the course, I thought, was leaving Bear Wallow, going up on that ridge line. Holy moly! I'm sorry that I did not run that ahead of time because that was gorgeous. The sun was up. It was yeah. The temperature was getting a little bit nicer. You could see both directions on both sides. All the trees' leaves had fallen, so there was like views for days, and all the snow was up there. The trail was basically, pretty navigable. It was not that bad. Even the climbing was just kind of pleasurable. I mean, it was just beautiful up there. So that was really fun. And working our way all the way finally up to Boblets, and then trying to run down that long road to the Boblets Gap aid station, which is, it's about 3-ish miles, and it's gradual, descent. So it's completely runnable. there's no excuse not to run it. But like after a while, when you're just running and running and running and running, and you're like, man, I sort of miss the hiking. I could use a little hiking right now. But um, but yeah, I just kept pushing and got to Boblets, and they were filling my bottles for me there, and I was standing at the end of the aid station table, and there was a bottle of Fireball sitting there, and the aid station worker looked at me, and I looked at him. And I said, okay, just a taste. And he's like, all right. So he pours me this little shot. He pours himself a shot, and we cheers together while I was waiting for my bottles. And I've done that in a few races, like completely spontaneously. And like, I'm not a drinker per se or anything like that. But I will say that Fireball whiskey is one of the best ways to get that nasty gel taste out of your mouth after all night of sugar. Like just wakes it up, just cleans it out. It's like it's kind of like a, mouthwash a little bit, but it's more absurd, so it's kind of funny. So did my shot of Fireball and then headed out into the Forever section. And same as you, Derek. There was like 4 or 5 people that I was constantly leapfrogging with. Like I would catch up to them on the hikes. I'm going uphill because I had a killer hike, and then we'd start to run, and they'd kind of pull away from me a little bit, and then I'd catch them again, and sometimes pass them, and everybody would, everybody was good about if you kind of approached quickly, they would step off the trail and let you pass, but then they'd be right there like holding the pace with you. And I would say those 5 people I was with, ever since the wee hours in the morning, all the way through the rest of the race, they were all probably finished within 10 minutes of me. So that was pretty cool. And making it through the Forever section, I knew that it kind of what to expect in there, but of course I couldn't remember like how long everything was, and I was probably a mile outside of Day Creek aid station when I was using my poles to just kind of hold myself up. It wasn't a really technical spot, but I was running downhill through these little twisty turny trails, and I was using the poles just to keep myself up. And all of a sudden, I heard this little like kind of a sickly sounding snick sound. And I went to put my pole down on the left side, and there was just nothing there. And I realized that it had just snapped in half as it caught on a rock or something like that. It was sticking in the trail behind me. And I was like, all right, well, there goes that highly expensive pole, but I don't really need it anymore. So that's okay. So I just kind of cruised in from there. And at that point, I had fallen behind the good cushion I had against a 17-hour pace, but I wasn't that far behind the 17-hour pace, and I was well ahead of the cutoff. So I got in, and I knew that I had over 2 hours to go, 6.5 miles ish, 6.6 miles, and so I got through the aid station pretty quickly. Had some fresh tater tots, and then started up the hill, hiking again, and was again hiking with a guy who had done it a million times, and had said, "Oh yeah, we get to the top of this hill, you're going to see there's this gate," and he's like, "That's kind of the best and the worst thing, because then you go through that gate and it's downhill, but it's not a very fun downhill to run, so you just got to try to put up with it." And that was true, man. I saw that downhill, and I saw this one woman in front of me that I've been like pacing with all day, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna reel her in, and that did not happen. I would run for a while, she'd get a little closer, and my legs were dying, and I'd say, I need to walk for like 30 seconds because I cannot hold myself up. And then she'd kind of pull away a little bit, but it wasn't until I got to like actual road that I could, sustain the run and not worry about tripping on a rock and all that stuff. So, but it was great. I mean, I managed to make it in before it got dark again, even though I grabbed some lights at Day Creek Aid Station just as a precaution. But it was still kind of twilight as I was coming into Camp Bethel, and it was so great to come up that chute and give Horton a big old handshake and have him tell me, yeah, I knew you could do it, all this stuff. But yeah, it was pretty amazing, pretty amazing.
Final finish time?
7 hours, 22 minutes and like 9 seconds or something.
17:22.
17:22. Yep. And
And
my A goal was 17, and my B goal was just to, really finish.
right on. Right on.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, John.
Yeah. Hey.
And Tyler, bring us home.
All right. And so at Jennings Creek, well, when I started the race, I was wearing a beanie, a long sleeve shirt, a puffy jacket, and shorts actually. And so when we got to Jennings Creek, which is the halfway mark, at that point I just shedded the puffy vest. And so, it's always a balance with winter running, layering up but not wearing too much where you're sweating. And so it's finding the right balance. And so, yeah, shedded the puffy vest, try and drop like my lights and stuff so I could be a little bit lighter. And for me, the second half started to turn more into the hunt or the chase for my friend, knowing that he was like 10 minutes ahead. So, and also at Jennings Creek, I was like, hey, it's still dark. Because last year I came in around dark. So I was kind of surprised at that point. I was like, kind of thinking to myself, what the heck's going on? Like, I guess I'm doing okay because this is kind of like the same time I came around last year. So I was kind of surprised, like, what's going on? Like, I guess I'm doing well compared to how I did last year. So, pumped up. I was pumped with about chasing my friend and also knowing that I was pretty darn close to where I was at last year. And so going from Bear Wallow Gap to the next couple of going from Jennings Creek to Bear Wallow Gap, it was kind of interesting. Um, I found myself as we were going up these uphill roads that are still kind of runnable. I wasn't trying to run all of it. I found myself going into like a pattern of let me run for 10 seconds and then power hike for 20. And I kept doing that. It was kind of funny because I I I come across some runners where they kept running at a very slow pace up the hills, but even with my jog, hike, jog thing that I was doing, I would catch them and keep passing them along. So that was kind of an interesting thing is really start walking or hiking sooner so you could keep running later, especially for that second half. So um, I was still able to run a lot of the downhills as well and a good portions of the uphill, but still being able to run was a key thing. And eventually, about half a mile from Bear Wallow Gap, I see a familiar white running vest. And I was like, that's my friend Jason. So I had caught up to him at Bear Wallow's Gap. And I think that's around mile 42 of the race. And so it was good because, we were both happy to see each other. And so we came into Bear Wallow Gap. And at that point, I kept the same shoes. I changed to a different long sleeve shirt. And so I felt fresh. And my friend Jason and we actually left Bear Wallow Gap together. And we looked at each other and it's like, hey, this was like the same exact time where we both came into Bear Wallow last year. So we were pretty much the same kind of time frame leaving Bear Wallow Gap. Um, and so after Bear Wallow Gap is that uphill segment, and that's where I had mentioned earlier in this call that, hey, 10 to 15 incline, vary the up and down. And that's kind of where I locked in the training to the race. So that was a really cool aspect. And eventually I did break away from my friend. And as I started to break away, kind of went from a chase mentality to like a fear mentality. It's like, no, I can't let him catch up. You gotta keep going. So it's just kind of funny how, as you raise your motivation changes or what motivates you. And so it was kind of fun experiencing that during Hellgate. And eventually, the towards the end, you got the the forever section, which really sucked. It's just like this won't end. I'm tired of the uphills and the going down and uphills. And then, eventually you get to, that final aid station. And at that point, it's a 2.5 mile uphill. And I just try and run as much as I could and just really try to push myself because I know if my buddy caught up, he has me on the downhill. He's a much better downhill runner than I am. So I just kept looking back. It's like, don't see him. And by the time I got to the top and saw that gate, I just ran as fast as I could to get to the finish line. And so, funny enough, when I crossed the finish line and then when I look at the Hellgate results, I literally got, per the Hellgate posting on the website, the same exact time that I did last year. So 14 hours, 14 minutes, and 44 seconds. So that was like, wow, that was quite the race. And that says a lot, Aaron, about like these weather conditions and the training we've done over the year. It's it's really helped. So that was awesome to see.
Super cool. That's fantastic. Thank you
Yeah.
guys for sharing all those. And let's kind of start to wrap up here and talk about maybe some takeaways, some things that you may have learned. And it can be about anything, about yourself, about the race, about running, about mountain conditions, about snow. Yeah, just let's kind of take some takeaways here. Does anybody want to lead us off?
I could go.
Okay.
And this is Tyler. So two main takeaways is I gotta figure something out with nutrition because after 14 hours of eating precision chews and gels, I might need to change some things up. Or I take John's advice about taking fireball shots to wash out that flavor because after a while I was sick of those that taste in my mouth of those chews and gels. But so working out some GI issues. But the other takeaway and what I think is really important is that the community behind the race. So wherever, and I used to live in Charlottesville, so kind of up in that area. So what I have wished since I'm now in Charleston, South Carolina, is that I wish I was more involved with the running community over there, whether it's volunteering at the races or just helping those races um start because without Dr. Horton and his time and creating this very special race, it wouldn't exist. And on top of Dr. Horton, all the different race volunteers that are at the aid stations or who were there to mark the course in the snow conditions, and as well as all the different activities that go after the race and cleaning it up. That's huge. And also, Camp Bethel itself, just to give a little shout out to Camp Bethel, is like, you know, Camp Bethel and Dr. Horton, they've been working together. And I guess a little bit about Camp Bethel, it's just a place for people to go out there and reconnect to nature. And so it's, I think they're looking for ways to continue to foster that relationship between the race and Camp Bethel. So it's just kind of great to be part of a running community and just make things happen so other people or future racers can enjoy that.
Fantastic summation. Thanks you, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. All right, Derek, John, who wants to go next?
I can go next.
All right.
Uh, this was so Aaron knows this. I keep picking races that are like harder than the last. Like I have this thing where I just keep finding these amazing things, and I never thought of Hellgate as something that would be me, that I would do this. And I think that any advice I would give to anybody is that no, not everybody can do Hellgate because you have to get invited to Hellgate. But if you can get invited to Hellgate, you've earned it. And that it is a doable race. It's got a lot of really cool challenges, and the weather, the ice and snow and the cold and the time of day are the biggest problems, honestly, because the terrain is something that you can do. There is a lot of running. There's a lot of runnable sections, uphill and downhill. And so that was kind of eye-opening for me, even having run a little bit of the course and kind of visited it. was to get out there and realize that, okay, you got to be able to run this course. And I had had some friends who had told me that said, yeah, you just got to run where you can. You got to make sure you can run where you can. And if I was going to do anything differently, it would just to be to approach the race knowing what to expect and how my legs are going to be rebelling against that idea of running, but then I'm going to have to find a way to do it in the second half. Which I did the best I could, but in retrospect, you always think, okay, how could I have, saved my legs a little bit, maybe in the first half or whatever it could have been. But I, this race, what I took away from it is just that I just felt so incredibly grateful to have been able to do it. Uh, and frankly, proud of myself. There's a lot of races that I've done that I went into the race thinking I can do this. And this race I went into with a healthy bit of skepticism, thinking that there's a good chance I'm not going to be able to do this. And maybe some of that was through my experiences in having like legit DNFs finally in my racing career. I had so many times where I squeaked in the final hour, and it kind of gives you this false sense of security that no matter how slow you are, you can probably stagger in, under the cutoff, but not so all the time. But yeah, this is an amazing race. I told, Horton, he said, "What do you think?" when I came across the finish line, and he had made the joke that people come in all the time and they say, "That was hard, that was hard." And it's supposed to be hard. And I wanted hard. So what I told him is I said, that was an amazing adventure. And his face just lit up and he said, "Yeah, it is, isn't it?" And so yeah, that's the thing that I would take away from this one is that it truly lives up to its name. It's an incredible adventure. It's as hard as any 100 miler I've ever run, for sure. And the community is amazing. I mean, the aid stations, like you said, Tyler, the workers that were out there, all that they put into it, they enjoy their job. They're out there in the sub-freezing temperatures all night long, and you just know it. I mean, I've been an aid station worker plenty of times and put my heart and soul into it, so I know how awesome it is for them. And so it was just so great to be a part of that whole experience. So thank you, Aaron, for making such a terrible suggestion. A terrible and wonderful suggestion.
Yeah, I've got a sash here from actually it was like a bachelorette run, and it says bad influence.
Yeah, good stuff.
That's
Oh, also, I got to take away from this. And the other funny part about this is that I literally had to set an alarm for 8 a.m. Sunday morning to get up in time to register for Crazy Mountain 100. As Aaron knows, that race sold out in 8 minutes. So thank God I set my alarm and got up. But that was my qualifier. Like I would not have been able to get into the race if I hadn't finished. So thankfully I finished.
right on. Right on. Incredible. Incredible. Thank you, John. Derek, anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, thanks. I would definitely echo kind of the gratitude and the experience of the community and how special it kind of feels. Tyler and John already did a good job, I think, of talking about that. I also think that's kind of shown a little bit in the relatively low DNF rate for this event. As hard as it is, I think kind of Horton and the aid station volunteers and everyone else there does a good enough job of sort of making you feel like you really want to do yourself and do the race justice, which is kind of neat. You're not just gonna kind of sign up, pay your money, and check in and check out. It's not that kind of event. It's the opposite. Real quick though, thinking of a couple of takeaways, I think the number one thing for me at this event was I experimented a little more in a race with heart rate pacing than I've ever done before. We've used that in the past year training, and it's been good. And I feel like I can run by feel and know my zones pretty well. So that's usually how I've raced. But in this case, I thought, okay, with kind of where I'm coming into this, not wanting to blow it, I thought let's try the heart rate a little bit more. So I early on kind of said, all right, I think a target of around 130, sometimes where I come in around for kind of overall average. And that's going to be sort of mid to upper zone three for me. I would jog on the hills up to about 140. And then when I hit 140, I thought, okay, it's time to walk. And so it didn't matter. I would let other people kind of go on ahead. I didn't use a time basis. I looked for that. And then I would hike until it came back down into the 120s. And then I'd say, all right, it's time to kind of start moving again. And then that seemed to work really well. And then late race, it got flipped around a little bit. So then that kind of became a target to like not be a wimp, to push myself like, okay, your heart rate's a little low here. Um, so yeah, anyway, I was really pleased with that. And I think that's a strategy I'll try again.
Very cool. Thank you guys for sharing all that. I had to go back and look because I couldn't remember what I ran back then. That was 2016 for me. And like Tyler, I had done Masochist before it, but I had also done Grindstone because I did B series that year. And I was sixth place at Hellgate that year with a 12:12. So that was a God, what a good memory. It's such an amazing event. So I really appreciate you guys sharing all that, your stories, your experiences, because it is a pretty special event. Dr. Horton does a tremendous job, and it's probably, I would say, probably one of the only races left. And he's turning that over. Is that correct? He's turning that over to John Anderson. Is that right?
That's what I understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. And John's fantastic. He's, kind of a Charlottesville area runner and very well known up in that area. And actually, he just messaged me. He's in Crazy Mountain too, John.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, we'll see John at Crazy Mountain. John's been on the podcast as well with Chris Roberts, who Derek knows well. I think John just beat Chris at Hellgate this year. So some really cool people up in that area. So it is a very special race. And as John kind of mentioned, if you get the opportunity, it's well worth it. So the application process, as they said earlier, is a little bit, different. You have to do the paper application and send in a check and then kind of see whether you get in. So, but well worth it to put in for it. He kind of asked for like almost like a resume to kind of get to know you better, to, kind of try to make it a field like Derek had mentioned that is going to be a high percentage of finishers. So it's pretty cool. So, um, each of you, is there a way people can connect with you? Do you guys have social media or anything, any ways that you want people to connect with you if they have questions or anything? And if you don't want people to connect with you, that's okay too.
Yeah, I'm on Strava and Facebook and Instagram.
Strava, Facebook,
Usuals.
Insta. Okay, so that's John. I'll put him in the show notes. Tyler, you got any ways you would want people to connect with you?
Yeah. You can follow me on Strava
Mhm.
or on Instagram at Tyler F100.
Got it. And Derek?
Yeah, Strava's probably the best for sure. I guess I am on the other two as Derek S. Brown. But yeah, I'm a big Strava fan.
Okay. I'll put those in the show notes. Gentlemen, congratulations. So cool to have all three of you coming from different backgrounds, different, training, and see the success, especially on a true Hellgate year. So congratulations to all three of you, and thanks for joining me and for your time here. I really appreciate each of you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks so much, Aaron.
I want to thank all three and congratulate all three on their finishes once again. Derek, Tyler, and John, thank you for joining me. Congratulations on your respective finishes. I'm just over the moon happy that we went 3 for 3 on that one and had all of you finish, especially having Derek be injured and leading into it. I'm just very happy and proud of all three of them. So thank you guys and congratulations. so far as everything that's happening here in the world of running is life, we've got this challenge going on, and it is becoming challenging, which is what I wanted. This is a Masoji. It's a personal challenge. It's not supposed to be easy. It's just one of those things that hopefully makes you stronger and kind of shows you what you're made out of. And today on my run, I record this on December 18th, so I had 18 miles. I was reminded of how tough this can be. The past Monday was 15, Tuesday 16, Wednesday 17, today 18. It gets challenging. It gets tough, and got to dip into the mental toolbox to keep moving forward. And I had my playlist on today, and the song "Dig a Little Deeper" from Princess and the Frog, the Disney movie, came on, and it was great timing. Just reminded me, sometimes we got to dig a little deeper and just keep moving forward. And today was one of those days. Just a little bit fatigued today. Didn't recover properly yesterday, which was a good reminder to make sure that I'm eating healthy and, having good options to help fuel me for the next day, to help me recover for the next day, to keep hydrating, to get my sleep. All of these things are vital for me to have success at this challenge. So, tomorrow's 19, and then we get into the 20s on Saturday and Sunday, and we're in the 20s till almost the end. What a fantastic challenge it's been. Really enjoying the miles. Even today, my legs didn't feel bad. I couldn't go any faster. Heart rate was low, which was fine, so hopefully didn't take too much out of me. And I've really focused on, what food I've been eating today. So I'm hoping all of that contributes to having a better day tomorrow. But yeah, enjoying this challenge thus far. So, here we are. Still looking forward to racing the Fierce Dragon 100K. Trying to make sure that I get some climbing in here in the training, which can be very challenging because of how long it can take, and I don't want to let the heart rate get too high because I want to make sure I'm recovered for the next day. So there's a lot of challenges to this, finding that balance, and including strength training, which Coach Will, who is my last guest, changed my schedule just because of how high the mileage is getting. I'll get 126 in this week and 175 in next week, and then I finish off with 90 miles in 3 days. So, I appreciate everybody's comments on Strava, everybody that's following along and leaving me comments. It's greatly appreciated. I really do appreciate the support. I thank you guys for that. So, moving along, that's all you can say is we're moving along. We're getting there. Tomorrow is day 19. So, not having as much problems staying present anymore. I'm really just focused on the day and, not only the run, but recovering from the run. So, trying to make everything, as solid as I can day in and day out. So just enjoying myself. So, that's the big thing that's going on right now. Again, preparing for the Fierce Dragon. The 100K takes place in Vogel State Park and runs on the Duncan Ridge Trail. So very challenging course. Really looking forward to that. And that's going to be January 16th. Obviously the Slam has kind of been filling itself in. Once again, I'll be racing Scout Mountain 100, followed by the Ouray 100. And right now I'm signed up for Crazy Mountain, which I thought was 2 weeks apart, but looking today, it's only a week apart. So we're going to have to kind of reconsider that. I did put in for the lottery on Leadville and Wasatch. Leadville would be more ideal, obviously, than Crazy Mountain. So we'll kind of see how the lottery goes for Leadville. And, of course, we have to conclude with the Bear. So really cool race schedule. Really excited by it. Kind of helps me get through this challenge as well. Just know that I'm building a massive base for what's to come this summer. The footwear has been going great. I've really enjoyed my choices. The Forward Via 2 has been a great option, kind of for alternating that with, something more of a zero drop shoe on the alternate days, be it the new Lone Peak 9 Plus or my Torrens or the Escalantes. It's I've got a few different options. I haven't really been using the Mountain to Coast as much. I'm hesitant to. They were kind of bothering my knee. My knee feels good right now, so I'm really hesitant to use those again because I just don't want my knee to bother me, especially with the longer miles I've been putting in. So I really haven't been using that shoe much at all. But not to say I won't use it in the future and try it again, but I'm hesitant to try anything right now new that potentially could bother my knee. But I've really been pleased with that new Lone Peak. At the last time we talked, I'd only had one run on it, but I've gotten a chance to run much more on it now, and I'm really enjoying that shoe. Really is what I've been waiting for, so very pleased by that. I asked my mom to buy me a new pack for Christmas. Actually, I asked my dad and my stepmom, to buy me a new pack for Christmas. Looking at the Rab pack, it's super lightweight. I've been using the Kailas that I talked about, and again, like the fit. The functions, it's okay. Having a hard time storing the poles, which is a big challenge. And again, I can't use normal bottles in there. I can only use the Kailas Fuga bottles, and they're too small is the reality. So not totally enamored with that pack. I do like it. When I use a bladder, it's fine. But storing my poles has been a challenge with that one, just where you can put them. You put them on the back, and it's kind of hard. Just haven't been getting used to it. So, but I have been using the poles, especially on the climbing runs. So, but that's everything that's going on here. We got Christmas coming up next week, so this will be the last episode before Christmas. So for those that celebrate, I wish you a very Merry Christmas. I hope everybody is doing great. And as the New Year's approaches, if you want to have the conversation about coaching, happy to have that. You can check out the show notes for ways to reach out. My website is linked in there. On my website, there is a questionnaire that you can fill out that's sent directly to me, and I'll get in touch with you about coaching. The website, runningislife.run. So thank you all to all of you that listen, that reach out, that ask questions, that make comments, all of it. I love it. So thank you. And I can't wait to keep moving forward with you, my friends. So until next time, keep moving forward. Running is life.